Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, as we know that we are covering the State Human Rights Commission, right? This is the topic that we are covering right now. And basically under this that these are the topics we have scheduled for the discussion. Like the beginning of human rights, okay, how all these things were started. Human Rights Covenant, supplementaries of UDHR, thereafter the human rights beginning in India, chronology in India, introduction, composition of the commission, functions of the commission, working of the commission, human rights codes, and the 2019 Amendment Act. Okay, so this is the entire picture that we have scheduled for the discussion. If we talk about the topics that we have covered so far, so basically we have done with the beginning of human rights and the human rights covenants. These are the topics that we have covered so far. If we talk about the topics that we are left with, so it is the supplementaries of UDHR, beginning in India, chronology in India, introduction, composition of the commission, the functions of the commission, working of the commission, human rights codes, and the 2019 Amendment Act. Okay, so this is the entire picture that we have right now. All right. So before beginning with this lecture, let us revise the several facts and figures that all we had already discussed in the previous lecture. So basically, if we talk about the human rights, then we know because of the World War, we realized that we required a particular, you can say, international laws regarding the human rights and the human dignity that could be applied throughout the world in an equal manner. So that's why we know that the United Nations organizations, basically they formulated a Human Rights Commission, appointed Eleanor Roosevelt as the first chairman of that commission. And the commission was tasked to drafting a fundamental laws that could be put under the human rights category. Okay. Then we know on December 10, 1948, basically the commission submitted the report and they submitted the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Okay. And we know the 53 countries supported the UDHR while the 8 countries abstained them. Thereafter, what we had seen that there were human rights covenants also, like the UDHR was formulated. Okay. But to implement them, there were so many things that could be needed. So basically for this, ICCPR was formulated, International Covenants on Civil and Political Rights. And after this, ICESCR was formulated, which means International Covenant on Economic, Social and Civil Rights. Okay, sorry, cultural rights, economic, social and cultural rights. And then we know when we talk about the ICCR, so that is the only covenant that has been rectified by the United Nations. Even the United Nations did not ratify it fully. They just ratified it some provision and even provide some reservations and the exceptions. Okay, so this is the picture that we have created and that is what we had revised. So let's start with the today's topic. Today's topic is going to be the supplementaries of UDHR. What are the supplementaries first? Let us see. So you can say that when you were in school, if you can recall it, then you can recall it. When you were in school, okay. So basically in your schools, you have heard these terms like the course book and the supplementary books, right? You have heard this term. So what is the meaning of them? How do we use them? So basically there is a one course book. It means that the book which is officially included in our course. Okay. But if we look at the book, then it is not possible that each and everything regarding some topic is presented in the book, right? So basically for this, to fulfill the actual requirement, or you can say apply the 360-degree approach, basically we also uses the supplementaries, right? The supplementaries are the books that having the additional information that is not available in the course book, right? So the combination of these two could apply for the 360-degree approach. Similar thing is there. Similar things are there. Like there is the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That is the main course book. Okay. But it is not possible that each and everything, the way of implementing each and everything is well presented in this book. So basically, to fulfill the requirement, we have the additional book that is known as the supplementaries. Okay. And that is collectively known as the supplementaries of UDHR. And these are the additional things that are, you can say, not so much presented and did not have the adequate representation in the UDHR in the initial stage. Okay. So we can say, in addition to the covenants in the International Bill of Human Rights. Now, what is the International Bill of Human Rights? Now, this is the question I'm going to ask you. What are the elements of International Bill of Human Rights? This is the question that I'm going to ask you. And for this, you have 30 seconds and your time will be start now. Just think about it. Okay, the 10 seconds have been passed off. Last 20s are remaining. We had already discussed this in the previous lecture. Last 10 seconds are remaining. Just recall what you have learned in the previous lecture. Okay, the time's up. So basically, when we talk about the International Bill of Human Rights, so basically it implied the three things. What are these things? First is UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Second is ICC, okay, ICCPR, that is International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Third is ISC-ECR, that is International Covenant on Social, Economical and Cultural Rights. Okay, so these three combined together formulates the International Bill of Human Rights. Got it? So basically, the United Nations has adopted over 20 principal treaties. How many treaties? 20 principal treaties. Okay, that further elaborate on the human rights. So we can say that first the UDHR came into the picture, then ICCPR came into the picture, then ICS-ECR came into the picture, but they were not so much adequate that the things could be implemented throughout the country in the effective and efficient manner. Please remove this country and put world here. Throughout the world with efficient and effective manner. Alright, so you can say these 20 principal treaties were basically the additional treaties to the International Bill of Human Rights, and broad term you can say they are the supplementary. Okay, that further elaborate what are the human rights and what should be the universal right a particular human being should have. Okay, so these includes conventions aimed at preventing and prohibiting specific abuses like torture and genocide. Okay, torture and genocide. So here you have found two words and here you have found two words. Okay, so what is the difference between these two? Preventing and prohibiting. What is the difference between these two? So we try to track down. Preventing means, what is the meaning of preventing? And what is the meaning of prohibiting? So basically the preventing is the term that we use to prevent and to stop happening of certain action and certain thing. Alright, that is known as the preventing. So basically we can say, suppose if there is any condition that going to lead a situation of torture and genocide in certain area. So we should prevent this kind of situations so that the torture and the genocide cases could not be happen at all. First thing clear. Second is prohibiting. What is the prohibiting meaning? Prohibiting means if any, you can say any place experiencing the torture and genocide, if any authority, any government, any individual is doing torture and genocide, so this should be stopped with immediate effect. Prohibit. It means that even before happening, after happening, during happening, the things could not be allowed. So that is the difference between the preventing and prohibiting. Similarly, if we talk about the torture and the genocide, so they both are different terms, okay, but they both are having the same implications. Like what? The implications of removing the basic rights to the individual. Okay, like if we talk about the torture. So suppose there is some authority that detains someone, and because the authority wants the person who has been appointed to perform something, and the person is not willing to do this thing. So what will happen? They will start torture. It means that physically, mentally, they will try to force a person to do the thing in a particular manner in which they wanted him to do. Okay, that is called as torture. And if we talk about the torture, then this was, you can say, happening on the large scale during the world wars and the colonial era. All right, the countries which are defeating the other countries, they capturing the civilians and the military personnel, and then they started torturing them so that they could reveal the information, so that the pressure could be built on the enemy's armies. Similarly, if we talk about colonial era, even if we take the case of India, we know the Britishers were ruling India, and basically they used to torture the people of India so that they could work in their plantations, they could work for them without having the adequate means of employment and all. Okay. Second word is the genocide. Genocide is basically for the mass killing. All right. Mass killing means, suppose if you ever heard about the history, okay, if you read about the history, you know, during the history times, basically there were so many voyages. Means that one strong army attacked the another country for looting, all right, and you can say for another kind of things, all right. And whenever they defeated the another country, they used to kill the people on a large scale. So these are the genocide. If we compare both of them, so basically they are against the principle of human rights, against the principle of basic human dignity. All right. So that's why the torturing and genocide could not be allowed. After this, we can say, as well as they protecting especially the vulnerable populations such as the refugees. Vulnerable populations such as the refugees. So what is the meaning of this? So if we try to connect it, so we could connect it with the wars and the civil wars. Okay. There is a difference between the wars and the civil wars. And what is the difference? If we talk about the war, then the war is a situation when one country is attacking the another country. And you can say there are the group of countries that are engaging in fighting with each other. That is the condition of war. Second is the civil war. It means that now the country is not fighting with another country, but the country is fighting within the country. Okay. Like you can say, if you take the case of Sri Lanka, all right. In the Sri Lanka during the 20th century, there was a condition of civil wars. Like the Sri Lankan Tamils were fighting against the Sri Lankan Sinhalese. All right. So that is the condition of civil war. It means the war is not outside the country, but the war is within the country. All right. So basically during these times, if we talk about them, so there is the case of destruction. All right. Destruction means the people who were living there, they were forced to leave their areas. Why? Because of the war situations, because of the risk to their lives, because of you can say evacuating of the resources so that they could carry on their normal livelihood and the normal lifestyle. All right. Even if we take about the cases which are apart from the war and the civil wars. So if it's the case of majority and the minorities, like if you look at the history, what you will find that the population, and you can say the ethnic group of the population who are in the majority, so they used to pressurize the minorities to leave their lands, all right, and they used to throw them out from their territory. Okay, so the persons who got misplaced from their living places, okay, they are often termed as the refugees. Termed as the refugees. Okay, and the refugees becomes the vulnerable populations. Why? Because you can take them as an advantage. Okay, for example, if we talk about it, so all of you ever heard the name of Middle East, right? If we talk about the Middle East countries, so basically the Middle East countries have been in the situation of war for a long duration. Okay, there is the condition of civil war as well as the normal wars. Okay, so many people who were living in these countries, they were forced to leave their cities, to leave their homes, to leave their villages, and when they leave it, then they had to move to the nearby countries, and the people in the nearby countries usually appoint them as a slave. Okay, sexual abuses are very common, and even they force them to work for their gardens and all this kind of situation. So to protect the refugees who are the vulnerable population, there is the proper convention that we call as an convention relating to the status of refugees, which was formed in the 1951. Why? Because the refugees are the one who had lost their homes, okay, and now they are in the country that is might be welcoming them or not welcoming them. Because they are humans, so their rights should be ensured. That's why we have the convention relating to the status of refugees 1951. Okay. Even for the women, if we talk about the women. So there is a convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against the woman that was formulated in the 1979. Okay. Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women in 1979. After this, Convention on the Rights of Child in 1989. And if we talk about the 1997, so the United States basically ratified only the following conventions. Okay. And what are these conventions? So basically you can say that there were so many conventions passed over the period of time. Okay. And that are treated as a supplementaries of UDHR. Okay. Supplementaries of the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But there is the term ratified. Ratified means that the UDHR, and you can say the UN totally, the UN had adopted the provisions as the particular provision. Okay, so that is what we call as a ratification. So out of so many supplementaries, like we had say that there are more than 20 principal treaties that working as an supplementaries to the UDHR. So basically out of these 20 principal treaties, how many of them had been officially ratified by the UN? That's become important. Okay, so if we talk about the treaties that have been officially ratified by the United Nations, that have been officially admitted by the United Nations. So these treaties are, first is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. Racial discrimination means, like you have heard about this, the discrimination that is generated on the basis of skin color normally. Okay, like we can take the case of South Africa. Basically we know in the South Africa there was a colonial rule of Great Britain. Alright, they had occupied the country in the same manner as they had occupied our country. Alright, so basically when we got independence in 1947, all kind of discriminations we had prohibited. But when we take the case of South Africa, alright, even when we got the independence, so what happened? That basically most of the Britishers moved back to the London, moved back to the Britain, but some of them had resided in the country of South Africa as a citizen of South Africa. Then what happened? Like the South Africa became a non-official colonial territory of the Britain. How? Because there were the population of white people, those who belong to the Britain, the population of black people who were from the South Africa. So basically all the privileges, even in the government job, education, health and all, even in the public transport, could you imagine? These all privileges were basically available for the white population. When we talk about the black population, so their housing, the public transport, the health and all, these were not so good. Similarly, not even in the South Africa, if we take the world's most advanced country like the USA, United States of America. So there were also the case of racial discrimination. Okay, the white population is not so happy with the black population. All right. So basically, this racial discrimination should be avoided. That's why there is a convention on the elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. After this, the convention on the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide. Okay. Prevention means to stop, and if someone has committed it, so there should be an appropriate punishment. Okay. And what do you mean by the genocide? I had already told you. After this, the Convention on the Political Rights of Women. So what is the meaning of this? Basically, if we talk about the status of women, okay. So during the ancient and the medieval times, the conditions of the woman in the political sphere is much more healthier than it's today. Okay, like they could directly participate in the ruling class, they could directly participate in the administration. But if we talk about today, then today they are although allowed to participate in the political sphere and all, but because of the general perception of the people, the women are not considered as the right fit for various political situations. All right. Even if we talk about the voting rights, like in the previous century, it means the 20th century, when various political rights were given to the general population, even the women were not allowed to vote for some time. Okay. And the woman gets the right of voting after a long struggle. Okay. So basically, there is a convention on the political rights of women. It means that the woman should not be politically suppressed. Thereafter, the Slavery Convention of 1926, the Convention against the torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Got it? And if we talk about the Europe, okay, the Americas, the Africa, regional documents further extend the international bills of human rights. Okay, it means that, however, United Nations tried to formulate the International Bill of Human Rights that will be uniformly applicable to the world. Okay, but still there are the regions like the European region. Okay, like the America, like the Africa. Okay, because of the national conditions, because of the socio-economic and political conditions, these areas basically even further extended the International Bills of Human Rights in the terms of regional documents. Okay, it means that they adopted the principle of the International Bill of Human Rights as it is, but they modified it as per the need of the region. Got it? And if we take the example of it, for example, the African states have created the African Charter on the Human Rights and the Population and the human peoples, you can say. And if we extended it further, so African Charter on Human and People's Right in the 1981. Okay. And if we talk about the Muslim states, then they had created the Cairo Declaration on Human Rights is Islam 1990. Okay. Cairo means, what is the Cairo? Cairo is the capital of Egypt, and Egypt is the Muslim majority country. Okay. Thereafter, the dramatic changes in Eastern Europe, Africa, and Latin America since 1989. Now, most of you compare the America with the United States of America. That is not true. Like if we talk about America, America is the continent. All right. If we talk about the USA, United States of America, that is the country. Okay. So the Latin America is the Southern America basically. Okay. So the Eastern Europe, Africa, and Latin America since 1989, they have been suffering a, you can say, dramatic changes. So they have demonstrated a significant surge in the demand for respect of the human rights. And additionally, the popular movements that happened in China, the Korea, and other Asian nations reveal a similar commitment to these principles as we can see in the Europe, America, and Africa. All right, these things. So students, basically in this lecture, we have finished till here. In the next lecture, we will continue from here. Till then, just revise the facts and figures that all we have discussed in this lecture and be ready for the another lecture. With this note, let's end this lecture, and what we say, thank you.